politics, and host of No Labels Radio on Sirius XM, and Matt Schlapp, contributor with The Hill. Matt, I mean, there's no denying that just the geography of this event tonight and the campaign style feel to it is going to spill over to Alabama.
Absolutely, and the president's right in the tweet, which is, if you're a partisan Republican, as you're a conservative, you can't see anything good about the Democratic candidate winning, and his policy positions are abhorrent. So voters in Alabama, they have a tough decision to make.
Yeah, the RCP, Real Color Politics average, AB, of the race has changed, and Roy Moore, according to the average of recent polls, is up 2.3 right now. So it's going to be tight.
Right, just a couple things. Think of the people who are not telling pollsters they're going to support Roy Moore. Think of the state of Alabama. I think the Doug Jones voters are not living in Alabama. There are not enough of them. And this has a very energized get out the vote operation. They've made it very clear. There's been an update today on this woman adding something to the end of what Roy Moore reportedly wrote in her yearbook. Gives everyone a reason to doubt her. Makes them feel better about going to polls on Tuesday. I think he's going to win, for sure. Yeah, and, you know, Gloria Allred came out and said that they had a handwriting expert look at the actual signature, and they made an assessment that it was Roy Moore, but that her client did add notes afterwards on that yearbook, and that has exploded. Looking at it again.
Well, you can imagine why it's big news. Gloria Allred said the opposite when she introduced the yearbook just a couple weeks ago. I mean, Gloria Allred is not a credible person. What's important to note is that Beverly Nelson did not admit to forging Roy Moore's signature. That's not what's in question here. She admitted to adding notes, which Gloria Allred later said were notes that Roy Moore added, were descriptions of the date and such that Roy Moore added.
Exactly.
This also doesn't discredit the other accusers. I mean, if you read the original Washington Post story, and I encourage all of our viewers to go read it. I mean, you have to read the original one. Don't take somebody's word for it. Go read the original reporting on that. Lee Korfman is a highly credible accuser who had her accounts backed up contemporaneously. The details matched up. She told her story to the Washington Post 6 different times. The story was consistent from time to time to time. There are numerous other women who have made, I think, credible accusations, and Roy Moore has had trouble making a defense. I mean, he has been totally inconsistent with what he has said. He originally said that he knew, in particular, Gloria Beeson and Debbie Wesson Gibson, and he said, if we did go on dates, then we did, but I don't remember that. But lately, he's been moving towards a categorical denial in which he says, I do not know any of these women, and I did not date any of these women. Those two are totally different things.
Yeah, we'll see how much this factors into this rally tonight. It is going to be classic Trump style. He does have a lot to talk about besides this Alabama race, and that is the economy. The November jobs report, employers added 228,000 jobs in November, while the unemployment rate remained at 17-year low of 4.1%. And then the changes since he took office, we put this up time to time, but it keeps on kind of changing even more. GDP growth, unemployment rate, consumer confidence, average hourly pay. These are all positives.
Yeah, to me, the unemployment was low at the end of the Obama administration. To me, the real story in the economy is, without any major pieces of legislation beyond pulling back on regulations, this economy is taking off. And you had 5 hurricanes that impacted, that lowered the GDP growth. You could be having GDP growth at 4% or higher. There's no question that there's a pent-up demand in the business community, in markets, for this economy to take off. And that's why you're seeing it in the stock market. You're seeing it with this growth, and if this tax bill really happens, I think there's a real promising future for the middle class, because they're going to have economic prospects for no other reason than Americans are taking their money and putting it back on the table.
AB?
Well, I think the news from today is a great thing for the president. Should stay focused on that at the rally tonight, not ramble off on other controversial topics like he's known to do. But I think the tax reform package will pass, and I think he should talk about that tonight. That's a victory. I absolutely believe Republicans are going to pass something by Christmas. They just are determined to. I think the real concern among Republicans privately is whether or not the reforms are going to jolt some kind of change that in higher soaring in wages, and that whether people are going to feel it by next August before the midterm elections. They've promised a middle-class miracle. They have to deliver one.
Yeah, I think Matt is absolutely right. I mean, if you think about what you're thinking, how you look at your business, if you run a small, medium, even a large business. Under Barack Obama for 8 years, we had an administration, somebody in the White House, the executive agencies, bureaucrats in Washington, who were hostile to business, I mean, period. They were hostile to business. When Donald Trump came in, that was not the case. He has signaled repeatedly that he's serious about deregulation. He's implemented rules to change deregulation. He's cut back on the number of deregulation. I think that sends a message. I also think that people are hopeful that there will be some additional tax relief, and that is, I think, built in these numbers that we're seeing.
All right, one last thing on the other news today. Trent Franks saying that he was resigning effective today. It came kind of out of the blue after he said he was going to resign eventually. He had a statement saying, last night my wife was admitted to the hospital due to an ongoing ailment. After discussing options with my family, we came to the conclusion that the best thing for our family now would be for me to tender my previous resignation effective today, December 8th. Minutes later, the Associated Press had a headline that said, ex-aide, Franks offers $5 million to carry his child. Then Politico had a story about female aides fretted Franks wanted to have sex to impregnate them. We have now seen Al Franken, John Conyers. We are dealing with a Senate race down in Alabama with allegations, and this is the latest to... It doesn't seem like it's going to come to an end here anytime soon.
No, there were reports out yesterday that a major newspaper and another cable news channel are working on between 20 and 30 cases. The Trent Franks
20 and 30 cases on Capitol Hill?
Yeah. Of members in both parties. The total is between 20 and 30.
That's one way to drain the swamp,
I guess. Yes, it's a self-cleaning operation going on. The Trent Franks thing is really sad in so many ways, because he obviously never groped anyone or forced himself on anyone. But the fact that he didn't know that this was wrong and basically reckless and could imperil his career is really bizarre. I hope his wife recovers and everything works out. But you cannot make this up. It's the strangest thing I've ever heard.
And what about the swift move on not just this, but the Franken move, the Conyers move? I mean, is this setting up kind of the Democratic Party to try to say, well, Republicans didn't act like we acted?
Yeah, I don't know if either party's going to get away with that. The fact is this was wrongdoing with both parties, people acting inappropriately, and somehow people thought it was to kind of hush it up with some payments, which I'm okay with that if there's a victim involved that wants confidentiality. But beyond that, with American taxpayers' money, they need to know these tawdry details. They need to know what members. And look, the members are either going to have to resign or they're going to stand before the voters. And I have a feeling the voters have had enough.
I mean, the call for the names and the amounts is still out there.
Yeah, we will learn more details, maybe as many as a couple dozen, of members of Congress who have sexually harassed people on the staff. We will also learn much more about taxpayer money being used for settlements or being used to quietly make people go away. Those stories are being reported right now. I'm confident that we will learn much, much more. And the view that people have in the country of Washington, hard to imagine that it gets any lower, will get.
This digital currency, it's not really a currency, it's not backed up, but it is being traded. And there you look at it as it climbed through the year. We're back with the panel. We'll start there on the lightning round. Matt, I mean, it's really interesting. I've heard people talk about it, and then it's going to be the future, and then, you know, you look at it today, and it takes a dive. You got to be in for a roller coaster if you're in this Bitcoin market.
So I'm from Kansas. You know what else goes up and goes down and is a roller coaster? Any ag commodity, pork bellies, oil and gas prices. This is a commodity, I guess, even though it doesn't seem to be very real to me, and it's traded. And by the way, when you do these trades, Brett, you find a willing partner on the other end of the line, so to speak, who wants to short it when you want to go long, and that's the way this works. The government has no role in regulating this, but I'll tell you one thing. If you have a queasy stomach, stay away from it. I know I'm not investing.
Yeah, here's the UBS chairman on all of this.
People talk about it as a currency. It isn't, because there's nobody that controls the supply of it. And actually, when you look beyond that, Bitcoin is not a currency. That it's an accepted means of payment for everyone. It is accepted by a few who trade in it, but you cannot generally use it.
Maybe.
Well, I think being a cryptocurrency is kind of really sounds very cool to me. I was going to die happy not knowing what the blockchain was, though. I'm sort of grumpy that you asked me to talk about this topic. But I think that it's an interesting concept if you step back from it, which is that 20 years ago, we couldn't have really understood what the pervasiveness of something like Amazon would actually be in our lives. So at this point, it's down today. It's supposed to die in a bubble, but we actually really don't know.
Yeah, the question is what Capitol Hill does. I mean, do they step in? Does it get regulated? What happens with all this digital trading?
I think the default to that answer is no. When you look at what regulation has wrought over the years, you know, we've just heard that it's a currency that's not really a currency, and it's a commodity that doesn't actually have a commodity attached to it. But the question you posed at the beginning, is this a bubble? The answer is plainly yes. I mean, we've seen it go from less than 1,000 to 17,000 in the space of less than a year. Of course, it's a speculative bubble.
All right. Next up, the Department of Justice is investigating Planned Parenthood. A letter to Chairman Grassley and Senator Feinstein. The Department of Justice would like to request the committee provide unredacted copies of records contained in the report. This is a report about Planned Parenthood in order to further the Department's ability to conduct a thorough and comprehensive assessment of that report based on the full range of information available. At this point, the records are intended for investigative use only. Confirmation, essentially, AB, that they are looking into Planned Parenthood and this fetal tissue issue.
Which comes as no surprise to Planned Parenthood. Their argument is that they've endured investigations from 3 congressional committees, including Grassley's, and that, quote, the conclusion is that they did nothing wrong. If they've done nothing wrong, they can welcome another investigation by the DOJ.
All right, winners and losers. Winner first, then loser.
Winner are Jewish people worldwide, especially here in America, as the president did what his predecessors promised to do but never did, which was to move our embassy eventually to Jerusalem and make it clear that Jerusalem is the rightful capital of Israel. And the question is, will all those never-Trump neoconservatives finally agree that Donald Trump seems to be doing the right thing over and over again?
Loser.
Loser is Norm Coleman. I mean, here he loses to Al Franken in the closest of Senate contests ever, and there was a lot of voter fraud in that election of just a couple hundred votes, and, you know, he must be just upset today is all I can say.
Still has great teeth. All right, AB.
My winner are the firefighters in California. Godspeed to them. They're not eating or sleeping. They're doing everything they can, and it's simply amazing. And we wish them the best. My loser is Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who has taken the entire week to not defend the Federal Bureau of Investigation that is under his jurisdiction. We all know why he's doing it, but it's pretty astonishing.
Steve.
My winner is Cory Gardner, senator from Colorado, who has refused to let the National Republican Senatorial Committee support Roy Moore, given the credible allegations against him. He said yesterday again to our Jenna Liffitz at the Weekly Standard, Roy Moore will never have the support of the Senatorial Committee. Good for somebody to do the right thing, even if it's taking a political risk. My loser is Gloria Allred, who misrepresented what was written in the yearbook, never seems to be particularly interested in facts, and it could be a loser pretty much any time she's involved in something public.
Okay. Strong letter to follow. Panel, thank you. Have a great weekend. When we come back,